My name is Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic and I'm a member of the South. Hi, how you doing? What am I a member of? South Dixie Virtual Group.
Yeah.
You're welcome to come and see us every time. We have a lot of Zoom meetings and everything like that. Send me an email and I'll send you all the meetings we have. And we have a workshop on Saturday. It's pretty cool. And it's great to be. I haven't found necessarily have drinks since January 25th, 1981. So I'm in my 44th year of sobriety. And I'm going to share a little bit about my deal. And so I noticed there seems to be just a few more men here than women. So ladies, you're in luck because your odds are good. But unfortunately, the goods are odd. So stay away from these guys, you know. You can do better, trust me, you know. It'll work out, it'll all work out. So it's good to be here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm not sure whether I'm thinking, I think I should qualify. I think I should qualify, you know. I only need about 2 minutes. I was listening to a song on the way up here, one of my favorite drunk songs. I used to sit at I used to come out home towards the end of the last year or so. I'd come home and I'd look for dimes, nickels, and quarters, and I'd buy for $2.89. I could buy a gallon bottle of Carlos Rossi Chianti, and I'd sit by back then we had phonographs. You got to go back like 45 years. They had a phonograph. Do you guys know what a phonograph? You know what a phonograph is? And they had LP records. So with an LP record, you know, and I would only listen to Alky songs. You know, I mean, I don't need a sad song to make me feel sorry for myself, but it does help. You know what I mean? So I would listen to these Alky songs. So on this LP record, there might be like one song that I could listen to and really propel me to the heart of fucking darkness, you know? And one of the songs I used to love to listen to was Jimmy Buffett's A Pirate Looks at 40. Anybody ever heard that song? And I was listening to it on the way up. You know, I really do love that song. And it's one of my favorite lines in that song is, I made enough money to buy Miami, but I pissed it away too fast. Yeah, one of my favorite lines, which is basically my life. I spend money I don't have to buy shit I don't need to impress people I don't like. And I used to sit there and I'd start drinking out of that bottle, sitting next to the phonograph. And see, the problem is when you're playing LP records, you know, I'd be a superstar today with all the gizmos they have. We play LP records, when you get to the end of that song, you gotta lift up the needle and move it back over to play it again. And that's a difficult thing to do when in your imagination, you're imagining yourself singing that song to about 50 blondes in a bar. You understand what I'm saying? Now, I know you guys don't understand what I'm talking about because you don't know what it's like, but yeah, Braden, you like that, huh? Yeah. So you see, you're not that odd. So in any event, then I would start thinking about my funeral, you know, and it was great. And at my funeral, now don't get sick because I wasn't really dead. I was hiding behind a tree, you know. And at my funeral, all them bitches that broke my heart, they were all there around the coffin. You know what I mean? Crying their eyes out because of the way they treated me. As well, they should have felt bad, quite frankly, you know, and that's the deal. So that's my qualification, because I think that's something alkies do. At least that's something I did. Your whole life is about self-pity and thinking about yourself. Some sort of vivid imagination about stupid shit, you know? So I'm old, I'm 75 years old, and I'm not old enough to retire, but I'm old enough not to want to waste my time on bullshit. So that's basically it. And so it's good to be here. What can I say about myself today? The new freedom and the new happiness, I guess, right? I have no bucket list. I have no bucket list. My wife has a giant bucket list. A never-ending bucket list. She said, I've got to get a new refrigerator. I said, we have a refrigerator. And it works. She's got to get a new one. I have no idea what that's all about, but she's got to get new stuff. Amazon visits me every single day. I don't know. We don't even have closets to put all this stuff, you know? It just comes by everything. I have no bucket list. I don't need anything. I don't need to go anywhere. My wife booked a cruise. I've been on 1 million cruises. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to really leave my bedroom. And all I want to do is go to my meetings, hang out with my buddies, and read the Bible or something, or do something like that. I'm perfectly satisfied with my life, so I don't have any bucket list. It's a great thing when you don't have an ambition to gather up things in this world. You know, sometimes I forget that I lived a life many years ago where all I did was I wake up in the morning and say, if only I had this, if I only had that gal, if I only had a new wife, if I only had a car, if I only had this, if I only had that, and if I only had a new pair of shoes. And I'm not my shoes, I'm not my shirt, I'm not my car, I'm not any of that stuff. And the other thing is I don't have to prove anything to anybody. There's nobody I have to impress. I don't have to prove anything to you. Which really takes a little, I don't know how to explain this. Now I've been talking this shit for, over 40 years. I've been talking at any meetings and doing this stuff and going to different places, but it's so much easier and more relaxing to, love on people and talk to people when you're authentic. And I think that's basically what this is designed to do, to be the man and woman God wants you to be. The man and woman you really are, without the crazy bullshit, you know what I mean? The selfish bullshit. And you may think that it's easy to be you, but as an alcoholic, I can tell you, and it's hard to understand that unless you've made this transition or the transformation. And I'm not saying I'm there yet, but instead of trying to conform yourself to your AA meetings and conform yourself to the world and conform yourself to the way you think the people in the bar like, and trying to figure out what people like and what they don't like so they won't reject you and blah, blah, blah. Let me tell you something. For an alcoholic, it's not very easy to be you. Be the real you. Because the first reason it's difficult to be the real you is if you're an alcoholic like me, you don't know who the real fucking you is. Because you're just a jumble of reactions to stuff. You just are you're just disturbable. Stuff disturbs you and you look at things a certain way. So it's difficult just to be you. You're always you trying to prove that you're okay or you're better than, or, please don't reject me or please accept me and stuff like that, which sets up a sort of anxiety. Everybody you see looks like they're doing better than you are, your feelings and all that sort of stuff, and you cover up a lot. But if you're a true alcoholic, your alcoholic thinking seems the only normal one. You can't separate the true from the false. So as sickening as it is, as sick as it is, as fearful as it is, you don't realize you don't realize there's another way of doing it. When you've lived all your life feeling a certain way and being a certain way and reacting a certain way to people and situations, it's not like that there's a different way to react. You say things like, well, yeah, if it happened to you, you'd feel the same way. Because you think everybody, my sponsor once said to me, Russell, you know what your problem is? You think everybody should think the way you think. And I said, yeah, what's wrong with that? He said, but you're crazy. But you see, if you don't know you're crazy, you know how you're crazy. So that's what the first 10 or 15 or 20 years in AA will help you learn. Without the alcohol, you don't realize how crazy you are with the alcohol, but without the alcohol, well, you may realize at a certain point you're crazy with the drinking thing, but you don't realize how insane you are until you stop drinking and try to live life in this fallen world without the drinking, which helps you not to blow your brains out before you're 18. You know what I mean? Alcohol. Thank God for alcohol, because if I didn't have alcohol, I would have offed myself before I was 25. Alcohol allowed me to move into life and to date women and have sex and walk in the bars and, everything like that. If I didn't have alcohol, I don't know what I'd do. I'd be at home sucking my thumb. But then after the alcohol, and you got to do you got to pay the bills, and you got to walk around, you got to talk, you got to do all this stuff like sober. That's when you're like 6 months sober, or 3 years sober, 5 years sober, 10 years sober, at 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking about suicide, thinking about what a worthless piece of shit you are, thinking about how you're going to be you're never going to be okay, and you're never going to make this thing, and like your life is over, and you got 10 years, you know what I mean? And then you're trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with me. I'm going to meetings. I got a sponsor. I'm sponsoring people. I'm crazy, you know? And then you start learning about what this disease is, this dis-ease is all about. So I guess my job is to try to carry the message. All I can do is try to carry the message. I don't have the power to carry the message. And the only way I can carry the message is to give my own testimony as honestly as possible. I try to be genuine about the whole thing. And we used to have, when I came into AA, we used to have a thing called turning it over. I don't know what they do these days, because the meetings, I got to be honest with you, the meetings I mostly go to, I mean, I go to a lot of this stuff, but the meetings I mostly go to are full of serious believers and people that are in the fellowship of the Spirit. And there's nobody at the meetings I go to who stands up and say, well, if they talk about this shit, I would have been here. You know, there's none of that crap. It's like Founders AA. It's like in the old time AA, when first 5 or 6 years of AA, you couldn't get to a meeting unless you got down on your knees and gave your life to God. So in those meetings, they were like different than the meetings you go to now, because you couldn't go to a meeting without talking about God or hearing about God. There was none of this the way it is today. But and those are the kind of meetings I go to today. You know, I mean, that's just my choice. In the big book, it says your real reliance. On the last page, it says, but we will not know you. He says we can't be sure of that, but it says your real reliance must be on God. He'll show you how to create the fellowship you crave. So I've created the fellowship I crave, and I was told a long time ago, the man or woman you'll wind up will depend upon the people you hang out with and the books you read. And the books you read will depend upon who you hang out with. The thoughts you have will depend upon who you hang out with. You know, what you think and how you think will depend upon who. You know, it says if you want what we have and you're willing to go to alienate together, then you're ready. The people you look to that you want what they have will determine about what you're going to get. You understand what I'm saying? If you want to hang around with bullshit, you know, and just la-di-da this thing and do a, you know, I mean, if you want to do that deal, there's a bunch of people out in the parking lot, and there's a lot, you know, if you want to be cool, there's a lot of cool people in here. You don't want to be cool people, and you can be cool and sophisticated and talk about, you know, getting laid or whatever the hell you want to talk about, but, you know, but there are also some serious people in here if you look for them. If you're serious, if you look for them, you know, there's some other people in here. You'll end up winding up with who you are focused on. That's what I, you know, that's what I say. So we had this thing called Turn It Over. They might happen in groups now, I don't know, but because what would happen is if you had something bothering you, disturbing you, that you were talking about it a lot, you talk to your sponsor, you talk to people, and maybe it's a job, maybe it's a boss, whatever it is, a situation that's sort of driving you crazy, and what would happen is every once in a while you'd run up to somebody and they'd say, well, I think you need to turn that over. You have no power. You need to turn it over. You need to turn it over to God. You don't want to turn it over. You want to rip the shit out of it. You want to figure out the equation. You know there's a fucking answer. You know what I mean? You need to come up with $10,000 on Monday, or they're taking your house away from you and they're going to kill you. And and you have no way of coming up with the 10 grand. No way of coming up with the 10 grand. Zero. Because you're going to die and everybody's going to know you're a phony piece of crap. And you go up to your sponsor, he says, well, you know, do you have the 10 grand? He says, no. You know, everybody went, no. He says, well, I guess you got to turn it over. You say, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm not going to turn it over. I'm going to beat this thing to death. I'm going to lose sleep over it. I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going to kill myself. I don't know what I'm going to do. He says, well, I guess you got to turn it over. And then some people, I did this, not willingly, but when you surrender and you got nothing, and this could happen at 10 years, could happen at 20 years, you know. Sometimes you just get down on your knees, say, God, please help me. I don't know when I'm going to get this 10 grand. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm leaving in your hands. Whatever happens, I'll handle it. And you do that deal. Doesn't seem like it's much, right, getting down on your knees and just turning it over. And then all of a sudden, some guy comes up to you the next day and says, what's going on with that thing with your house and the 10 grand? He says, and then you go like this, you say, oh, I turned that over. I turned it over. And then Monday comes and you get a letter in the mail and say, no, you don't owe us 10 grand. We owe you 5 grand. You say, holy shit, this thing works. If I know this thing works, I would have turned it over a long time ago. I would have done this stuff. And all of a sudden, wonderful things happen to you. And all you have to do is turn it over. It's just that you don't want to turn it over. You want complete control because you're scared. Because fear is the corrosive thread of your life. You don't realize it's all in your brain. And then you start reading stuff in the big book, or maybe you hear somebody talk that says the drinking is just a symptom. The real disease centers in our mind, not our body. We say the problem is not the world of what's going to happen. The problem is on our mind. We magnify it and we magnify everything. We harborize everything. We don't believe in God. We think we're all alone in this world. There is no God. There's two types of people. There's a person who says there is a God. There is a God. He's concerned about us. He may allow us to suffer a little bit. He may be able to do things and everything, but in the end, he's good. And whatever we go through, even if it's tough, it's for our own benefit and everything's going to work out. And those people live a life of hope. Then there's the people that say there is no God. You're on your own. And one day you're going to get whacked, and one day you're going to get killed, and one day you're going to get hurt, and sometimes it's your day in the barrel, and it's not, and it's all a matter of fate, and the cavalry's not coming, and nobody really gives a shit. You're on your own. And those people live a life of fear. And alcoholics all live lives of fear. That's why fear is the corrosive thread. So so the choice of the God thing is a decision as to whether you want to live a life of hope or you want to live a life of fear. So let me give you an example. So one day, after doing a few things that I'm not really going to go into because we only have a short period of time, because what happens is you really don't have any choice in the matter. You think you have a choice, but you don't, because the way this disease works, the disease never stops, ever. And the worldly climbers, you know how Bill Wilson and I needed God and he came, and then, but however, he says he came, God came. He said, please help me, and he came, and the wind went through, and then Bill Wilson says this, but soon worldly clamors, mostly within myself, blotted his presence out. So apparently, if you believe Bill Wilson, or if you believe your own experience, after a while, you realize that you could one day feel like Braden's feeling, like he testified to. It's wonderful. Like he's all right and he's doing good because of God, and like a week later, you could be sucking on the muzzle of a gun because of circumstances that are happening in your life in the world. You could be sucking on it, you could be drinking. One day you could have 10 years sobriety, the next day you're drinking. I mean, I've heard one person, I've heard a million people saying I got 20, I've been around the program 20 years, I got 30 days now. I had 20 years and then I drank. You hear that stuff all the time. How does that happen? Well, if you actually distill the big book, if you actually distill it all the way down, it all has to do, see what your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you. It's all about your relationship with God. Burn the idea, it's all about the God thing. But the thing about the big book, and I'm not putting it down or anything like that, is it's like AA light. There's really probably 3 ways of doing AA. There's probably more than 3 ways of doing it. You can do it without God, which is like just trying to stay sober on the fellowship. This isn't exactly Well People's Anonymous, by the way. But you can try to stay sober on the fellowship, go to a lot of meetings, and just sort of tough it out and don't drink even if your ass falls off and you want something. The fellowship will keep you sober for a little while. But you want to know something about alcoholism? Because alcoholism is every day, every hour of the day. When you stop drinking, yes, you're not going to have problems like being arrested for DUI. But it ain't going to prevent you from having the problems of this world. It ain't going to prevent you from one day showing up and the doctor telling you you've got prostate cancer. It's not going to prevent you from having a wife or a son or a daughter who's killed in a car accident. It's not going to prevent you from being fired. It's not going to prevent you from all the shit that's going to happen to you and your friends that have absolutely nothing to do with your acting like an idiot. One of the John Wayne quotes is, what does he say? He says, life is tough, and when you're stupid, it's even tougher. I mean, this world is tough. This world is tough as shit for non-alcoholics. And it's always that way. It's not like you get 20 years and it stops being tough. It's not like you get 20, 25 years and Florida Power writes you a letter saying, listen, we understand you've been sober 25 years, you just got a medallion, You won't be having to pay for electricity anymore. You know, it's not like the bills stop. You know, every 30 days, the same crap. It's like, you know how how did the Grand Canyon get built? Over 1 billion years, the water, the erosion, it's like that's what the world is. And here's the deal with alcohol, and God forbid, you may be able to handle one thing. You may be able to handle 2 things. You may be able to handle 3 things. But then somebody looks at you funny and you got to stab them to death. You know what I mean? It's just like life becomes overwhelming. You know? Overwhelming. I just got a thing in the mail from Census Bureau. Anybody get the Census Bureau thing? If you're lucky enough, you get this thing in the world where they ask you all about your life. Everything about you. And they add a little thing. By the way, failure to do this is a crime and you're going to owe us $100. And you say, holy shit, where did this come from? You know? And I'm an alcoholic. I don't like people telling me what I have to do. Just one more thing I have to do that I didn't ask for. You know? You with me? So, but you know what happens? You got to turn that. You got to turn stuff. And the world comes at you 24/7, nonstop, out of nowhere. And I've got to be able to handle it without getting upset. And that's, if you're an alcoholic, you're upsettable. All the time. I can't miss a beat. I can't miss one time. Because that one time, there'll come a time in every alcoholic's life where they'll have no defense against the first drink. His defense has to come from God. And it doesn't say that time is at 3 years. It doesn't say it's at 5 years. It doesn't say it's at 5. You may think, well, that has to do with newcomers. It could happen at 44 years, right? There'll come a time in everybody's life, no matter how many years they have behind them, where the world will close in on you. The stuff will happen where you'll have no defense. Your defense ain't going to come from the world or anybody else or even the group or anything. You're that kind of thing. They're not going to be around. Your defense against going wacky, drinking, or whatever you're going to do is going to have to come from. I mean, my sponsor, I got a wonderful guy who I love very much, who's one of my sponsees, is still one of my sponsees, and he was doing great, he's fantastic, and then one day, the world closed in on him, and he drank, and he wound up in jail for like 9 years, 5 years, or something like that. He's actually on reading now, I love him, he's going to be out soon. But the bottom line is, I said I'd talk about him, because he said, make sure you tell the group that everything you say comes from me. So, that's James. But I told him I would do it, so I have his permission. And you know something? All I have to do...
He's laughing.
He's laughing. That's how crazy he is. All I have to do, I got to be perfect every single time the world closes in on me. All the alcoholism needs is my screwing up one time. 1,000,000 times I could do it perfectly, hit the ball out of the park. I just have to miss it and be emotionally disturbable and not have a connection with God one time. And I could blow a marriage, I could blow a job, and I could drink. So how do you keep this thing up like permanently? I know you got people that tell you, well, it's progress, not perfection. Well, you know, that's a nice thing to say to alcoholics so they don't feel like shitty. And by the way, nobody's going to get perfect, not me, not anybody else. But I'll tell you what, you better figure out how to be perfect with the God thing. You understand what I'm saying? Because the alcoholism is no respecter of you. It just wants you dead. It's patient, it's cunning, it's baffling, you know, and that's the deal. So I used to turn things over, and then one day I woke up, and I'm not going to tell you maybe I'll hint at how I did it, and I realized I was living a turned over life. I don't know how to explain to you what a turned over life is like. What a turned over life is like is that most of the time, I'm not going to say all the time 100%, because then I'd walk out of here and God would do something and say, you see, big shot. But I'm saying there's a difference between always being anxious, always having anxiety, going through all that stuff and having a difficult time, and having it like once a week for 3 minutes. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? And one day I realized that I just wasn't anxious. I wasn't getting anxious about things. I had lost fear of people and economic insecurity. Not that I had economic security. Not that I had it. You know, I once complained to Ray O'Keefe about the money thing. And he said, I said, I'm doing everything. I'm doing everything. I'm doing all the steps. I'm sponsoring 10 million people. I'm 15 years sober, 20 years sober. I'm going to meetings. I've done the steps until the cows come home. And I'm broke again. And I don't know. And I have to worry about this thing. And I'm not sure I can pay the mortgage. And this is crazy. He said, what about this promise? You lose fear of economic insecurity. You lose economic insecurity. He says, who told you that shit? I said, it's in the big book. He said, it's not in the big book. I said, I'm telling you, I was just reading it the other day. It's in the big book. He says, well, read it to me. So I open it up and he says, you'll lose fear of people and of economic insecurity. He says, yes. He says, you see, Russ, you lose the fear of economic insecurity. You will always be broke. You will always be broke. It just won't bother you, you know? He says, well, thanks a lot for the fucking pep talk, you know what I mean? I feel a lot better now. But it's true. People will always act crazy. Shit will always happen. The world will always do what it wants to do, whether you like it or not, but it just won't bother you. What would your life be like if stuff didn't bother you? So if you find yourself in a position that stuff isn't bothering you, I'm not talking about for an hour and I'm not talking about for a day, but if you find that, you know, it's been a month and you're just not bothered, and you're trying to figure out how come you used to be a thumb-sucking crybaby and how come stuff isn't bothering you, you may have crossed over because the stuff you're doing and who you hang out with to something, something different, something having to do with the sixth step, something having to do with being rocketed in the fourth dimension of existence and knowing peace. You know what I mean? Knowing heaven and knowing peace. You may be on that rocket ship ride. And once you get to that place, it's a different story because you don't turn things over. You live what's called a turned over life. There are signs to a turned over life. And all I can tell you is my testimony. All I can give you is my testimony. You may laugh at my testimony. You may think, that guy's stupid, you know? That's kind of drastic, that's dumb. So I'll give you some testimony. I'll give you some recent testimony. I'll give you some 12:43 in the morning today testimony. So I went to sleep last night. I'm 75 years old. I can't stay up late anymore. And I still work for a living. I still got stuff going on and a lot of things. So I woke up last night. I went to sleep at 9:30 at night. And I wake up, you know, from deep sleep. And you know, I'm thinking it's morning or something. And I look at my, you know, this thing, the flip phone, and I'm up. And it's 12:43. I had a deep for 3 hours. Now it's 12:43, and I got to do shit the next morning. I used to panic over not sleep. You know, you hear a lot of newbies says, I haven't been able to sleep in 4 weeks. I say, first of all, that's bullshit. Okay, but that's how alcoholics talk. You can't sleep in one night. It's like 10 years I haven't been able to sleep. And you know that's what's going on forever. I'm going to sleep, you know. But then I used to panic. What am I going to do? I'm going to die. I can't get to sleep. You know, nobody ever died, by the way, from lack of sleep. You know, the only people who think they're going to die from lack of sleep is like newcomers in Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, don't worry about it. When you get tired enough, you'll sleep. You know, but in any event, I asked him. I said, have you ever read the Miami Herald? He says, yeah. He says, you ever heard of a front page story? Man dies from lack of sleep. He says, no. I says, don't worry about it. Okay, so, but I woke up at 12:43, and I look at my phone, and it says 12:43. Supposed to wake up like 6:30. I wake up 6:30 because I go to a 7 a.m. spiritual meeting called the Serenity Group. It's about 45 people from all over the world that go to the meeting, and we, they're Fellowship of the Spirit people, and I know them all, and they know me, and we're friends. And I always try to wake up to go to that meeting, start the day before I start thinking. Sleep, I just want to get there, and because that's my life, that's my pleasure, that's my recreation, that's everything for me. And I don't have to spend $2,000 on a cruise, or I don't have to spend money. I just go to that group. So now it's 12:43 at night. So what does a guy like me do at 12:43 at night? Now I'm up, and what you do? I got my phone. So I go to my WhatsApp, where I have a lot of my buddies on WhatsApp. We have a thing called Friends of Russell. There's about 500 or 600 people. I press the button, see what's going on, and some guy, one of my guys in the Fellowship of the Spirit, sends me a spiritual song. Sends me a spiritual song. And music. So I like music. I like, spiritual music. So I press the button. And I play this 3 or 4 minute spiritual song. Praising God. Just a great song. Great song for alcoholics, all about being down and you're dying and the Lord's saving you and stuff like that. So I play this song and I listen to this whole song. And in the middle of the song, I'm in bed now. You understand? I'm lying down and I'm raising my hand to God, saying, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God. You know what I mean? I'm raising my hand to God, which is a lot better than feeling like your life is over. You know what I mean? And so then I spend the next 20 minutes sending the song for my closest 1,000 people I know. You know what I mean? Including you. I sent it to you. We're going to use that at the workshop, that song. It's a great song. And then that song, because you know what happens when you get on this internet thing, all that crap? Right up Lee says, try this song. So I listen to another song, And now it's like 1:30 in the morning. I send that song around. And I go to sleep. And then I wake up the next morning. I wake up that morning, like 6:30 in the morning, go to my meeting. And I'm singing those songs. And I get on the meeting and talk to my friends. You know what that is? That's living a turned over life. You don't have to struggle to try to get back to God or struggle to know God or turn things over. You're living a turned over life because you never stop thinking about God. You never stop thinking about God. Now, that may sound drastic to you, but let me tell you about the word drastic. And I'm going to read you something. I got some stuff to read from the big book about Alcoholics Anonymous and 12 and 12. And the reason I got this stuff to read is because I know what I have to say doesn't really mean that much, but at least you could say this is pure AA. So you can walk out and say, well, I don't know what this guy had to say. He didn't say much, but I got some pure AA. It's almost like this will make this a real AA meeting. But the program of, this is from Big Book, page 42, 43. Well, the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. Drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. That was not easy, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as it in fact proved to be. That's the Big Book. I call that drastic sobriety. I call it founder sobriety. Founder sobriety is what they used to do in the first 5 years where you couldn't go to a meeting unless you got down on your knees and asked God to come into your life in front of everybody else in AA. In other words, if we were doing founder sobriety here, the only way you would be in here is if outside there before you got in, you got down on your knees in front of everybody and gave your life to God. Now, you probably think that's drastic, right? You say, well, I wouldn't have been here, and you're right, you wouldn't have been here. But the people that were here would have done that. And you would have never heard one person stand up and say, well, if they had done that, I wouldn't have been there, because everybody in there would have known what they were getting into and would have humbled themselves just to be in your presence. And the only thing you would talk about God and being grateful for God. But instead, you go to groups where people don't want to hear that shit. And they get mad at you. And they tell you things like, don't talk about that stuff, you're killing people, or you're hurting people. So you get like mixed signals. You have a big book that talks all about God, see what the relationship with Him is right, great events will come, burn the idea and everybody black. There is one who is all power, that one is God. All this stuff about God, and you go to your groups that you love and that help you stay sober, and they tell you don't talk about the one thing the whole book talks about. And what that does to you is it makes you doubt. It instills doubt. And if you have doubt, you don't have faith. And if you don't have faith, all you're doing is doing this by the numbers, which you could probably do for 5 years or 10 years or 3 years, but then you end up drinking again. You never know why, because you've done everything mechanically they tell you to do in AA, but the point is you have no relationship with God. No real relationship with God. The whole emphasis on step 7 is on humility. We could actually have earnest religious beliefs. We could actually have earnest religious belief which remain barren because we are still trying to play God as ourselves, play God ourselves. In other words, that is, I'm sober because I'm doing all this shit. I'm sober because I'm doing all this. Let me tell you, you're not sober because you're doing anything. You think you're sober because that's the way your mind works, because you're delusional. But let me tell you a little story about something. One day you were drinking and you couldn't stop drinking. One day you were drinking and you couldn't stop drinking. You couldn't envision a life without drinking. The next day you weren't drinking and you couldn't envision drinking again. And guess what? You weren't doing shit. You weren't doing shit. You may tell yourself, well, because I went to a meeting and I picked up a white chip, but the bottom line is some sort of miracle happened in your life. The Red Sea parted, some sort of miracle happened in your life. And you think it's because you walked into a meeting. You don't realize you walked into a lot of meetings, you did a lot of stuff, you went to a dog night and everything, you were never able to do that. All of a sudden, one day, at one time, something came into your life like Bill Wilson, and you stopped drinking. And you forgot it was a miracle. Like Bill Wilson said, we ought to stop talking about God. And Henrietta Seiberling says, Bill, the only reason you're sober is because of God. Don't worry about pleasing alcoholics. They've been pleasing themselves all these years. You better worry about pleasing God. We can actually have earnest religious beliefs which remain barren because we are still trying to play God ourselves. As long as we place self-reliance first, the genuine reliance upon a higher power was out of the question. That basic ingredient of all humility is the desire to seek in God's will was missing. Did you know the basic ingredient of you want to know whether you have humility or not? I'm not saying I got it, but want to know whether you might have it? If your entire life revolves around wanting to do God's will. And that's the only thing you think of. God. He becomes the central factor of your life. I'm not making that line up, that's out of the big book. For us, the process of gaining a new perspective was unbelievably painful. Here's the good news. It's not an option. You don't have to do it. You're just going to have to shit kicked out of you by life. Trust me, it's going to happen. It could happen in 20 years, it could happen in 10 years. You will either do it, you'll either learn the discipline of loving and embracing God and who He is, or you're going to learn the regret that's going to get from having a crappy life. For us, the process of gaining a new perspective was unbelievably painful. It was only by repeated humiliations that we were forced to learn something about humility. It was only at the end of a long road marked by successive defeats and humiliations and the final crushing of our self-sufficiency that we began to feel humility as something more than a condition of groveling despair. This is the 12 and 12. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. So you say to yourself, man, they don't talk about this stuff the way you're talking about it at AA meetings I go to. Think about that. Think about that. They say, let's talk about gratitude. Let's talk about the promises. Let's talk about resentments. But they don't talk about the meetings you go to. I don't want to judge you. Maybe you go to meetings where they talk about stuff the way like I'm talking about stuff. This is Founders Area. This isn't AA like, where you do some of the steps, or you do know that you believe in God, or you don't believe in God. This is the different. This is what they were doing when they were getting on their knees, and then you come to an aim. With the books they found absolutely necessary: 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, and the Book of James. This is Bill Wilson. This is from the big book, page 13, 14. There I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood Him, to do with me as He would. I placed myself unreservedly under His care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, that without Him I was lost. This is Bill Wilson when he first got sober. Without Him I'm lost, I am nothing. This is what he says. I admitted for the first time that of myself I'm nothing, that without Him I am lost. I say it that way for a reason, and I'll tell you why in a second. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend, with a capital F, take them away root and branch. I have not had a drink since. I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. So if this doesn't make any sense to you, it's because it doesn't make any sense, because it has nothing to do with your thinking, God forbid. We operate on our thinking. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, ask only for direction and strength to meet my problems as He would have me. By the way, he wrote this when he had three and a half years. Right? And he wrote this at 3.5 years. That's why we think it's God inspired. Because he was a whacked out alcoholic, seriously. Never was I to pray for myself, except as to my request for my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. My friend promised that when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, with a capital C. That I would have the elements of a new way of living, which answered all my problems. You spoke about that. Belief in the power of God, plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain the new order of things were the essential requirements. Drastic. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. It meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn all things to the Father of light, capitalized, Father of light, resides over all us. He is the Father, we are the children. These were revolutionary, and, you ready? Drastic proposals. But the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory, followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known. There was utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most people gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. Now here's the deal. Remember the one I yelled a little, I said this, it says, I admitted for the first time, operative word, first time, that of myself I was nothing, and that without him I was lost. God is everything or he's nothing. There is one who has all power, that one is God. May you find him now. Well, that sounds like a big deal. Well, it's sort of like a big deal. I'll tell you what's a big deal. If you can feel and have that attitude the same way if you have 43 years. I can tell you what's a big deal. If you can have that attitude if you have 10 years. If you can have that attitude every day of your life for the rest of your life. Because you know what it says in the big book? It says it's easy to rest on our laurels and head for trouble because alcohol's a subtle foe. Because you start going to meetings and you get 5 years and you get 10 years and you get 15 years sober, and you go to meetings, you're staying sober, and whether you know it or not, in the back of your mind, you know you're sober and you know you're sober. You know why you know you're sober? Because you're going to meetings. Because you're sponsoring people. Because you're doing something. And all of a sudden, God is not really necessary. He's not even the centerpiece of your life. Meetings are the centerpiece of your life. Your sponsor is the centerpiece of your life. You know? Your sponsees are the centerpiece of your life. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, when that happens, the whole thing falls apart. Maybe you have cancer, maybe, some of the sponsors aren't there, the sponsees aren't there, the meetings aren't there, and you're a wreck because you've got absolutely fucking nothing. And then you know loneliness is few do. Because the truth is, you got all the precepts of AA, but you got nothing. You know why? Because God's not the central factor of your life. And you lack humility. Because somehow without anything, somehow you were bought into the idea that all you need is not to drink, even if your ass falls off, because that's what they give out medallions for. And you forgot the fact that you're totally self-centered. You think you're playing God and you're doing this yourself. It's self-will run riot, though you really don't think so. And you think basically you believe in God, when the truth is when somebody like me or somebody else talks about God, it makes you feel uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable. And so I go to your group, whatever your group is, and I talk like this. And 5 guys walk out of the room and they say, I don't want to hear this shit because it makes them uncomfortable. And I'm talking because I'm talking about drastic shit, and you didn't like what I'm talking about. But maybe those guys won't stay sober for 43 years. Or maybe they'll have lives of quiet desperation. So you got to ask it. So listen, by the way, this isn't just me. I read you parts of the big book and the 12 and 12, which say the same thing I'm saying to you right now. And by the way, if you don't believe it, if you really want to read the big book seriously, you'll find about the 300 parts of the big book in the 12 and 12 that I left out because we didn't have time for me to read them to you. Because the entire big book is about that stuff. And you think it's all about don't drink and go to meetings. Or don't drink even if you ask. The big book is all about that stuff. But you don't hear it in meetings because it's just one sober lightning. But let's not get heavy about this stuff because you're killing newcomers.
No.
And the truth is, what's killing newcomers is nobody talks about this stuff. How can you kill a newcomer? Worst comes worst, they don't like this. They walk out the door, they either die, you know what I mean? It's not a big deal because alcoholics are about as common as dirt, you know what I mean? Nobody's ever writing, you don't say in Time magazine, oh, those poor alcoholics, you know, that kill, you know, they end up having crashes and they kill 2-year-olds, you know, but they walk away, you know? Or they either die or they come crawling back in here and they're desperate and they start doing it the right way. You understand? And what you have to understand is with AA groups, mostly because they don't do it this way, you understand what happens is AA caters to the lowest possible denominator. And so yes, the newcomer is the most important person in the group. Well, not really, because there's a guy here with 11 years that's going to be drunk in 6 months and he doesn't know it. He's important too. You know what I mean? Maybe he's even more important. But the bottom line is the newcomer may be the most important person in the group, but your attitude is don't do anything that disturbs the newcomer because he might walk out. You understand what I'm saying? My attitude is disturb his fucking ass. Because he's going to die out there if he doesn't get his mind straight. Instead of going down to his level, bring him up to your level. But you're so scared to do that because your ego is so fractured and you feel so bad that you will prostitute yourself to the world so that somebody will say, I really like you. Because you're an alcoholic, and one of the consequences of being an alcoholic is you want people to like you, you don't want them to reject you, and you don't want that newcomer walking out the door and I said, yeah, I went there, it's fucking crazy, that guy Russell's an idiot. He did. As a matter of fact, I drank because of him. And you want something? If you want to drink because of me, I applaud it. I want you to say, you drank because of Russell, he said this stuff about God, write New York about me, you know what I mean? It's fine with me. Because believe me, if you drink because of me, I'm the least of your problems in this world. You know, but there are going to be some people that are going to stay sober for 20, 30 years. And that has to do with the 7th step, with humility. And that has to do with the 6th step, which separates the men from the boys. Because the men and the women who are into the 6th step and 7th step, this stuff doesn't threaten them at all. It doesn't. As a matter of fact, they say right on. You know what I mean? Because they're involved in this thing, the few men and the women. You understand? The people that are not involved in this thing saying you're rocking the boat, I didn't come here for this stuff, because they don't want to grow up. You know, they just want to go to the parties and, you know, pick up the medallions and stuff like that. Unfortunately, and I take my job seriously, and I'm going to close it up with this, we meet in a giant one-room schoolhouse. So there's people with 3 days, and there's people with 3 months, and there's people with 10 years and 20 years here and everything like that. And we have all different stories and all different people, but unfortunately we're on the 6th step and the 7th step, the grown-up steps that separate out the men from the boys. And I don't water this shit down because I worry about some guy in the back row that's not willing to listen, doesn't want to hear this crap, okay? Or maybe he needs to hear this crap. I'm more worried about the old timer, the guy that has time here, that's going to drink or not get this thing, or the guy who has time who's miserable and doesn't understand what's going on. You know, so instead of trying to, because I have a choice, I can sit up here and run through my brain this crap. Should I talk about things so that they'll like me, or should I tell them the truth? And if I talk about things because I want you to like me, tell a few jokes or two, and I want you to like me, then what I'm basically saying is I don't really give a shit about you. What I really care about is how you think about me. I care about myself. But I say I'm just going to tell them the truth the way I know it, and I'm going to just be, this is the deal from my standpoint. Whether they like me or not, at least I've done my deal. At least I'm dishing out the truth, and I can't walk out of here because I lied to you. Because I was scared to tell you the truth, because I was more worried about me and what you think about me than about talking the truth. You get it? That's it. I went 2 minutes over.